Welcome to Talent Experience Live, your weekly look at all of the hot topics in HR.
People are 28% more productive when they use vacation time.
Involving themselves very deeply in diversity and inclusion efforts.
Ramping up college recruiting and career fairs.
Artificial intelligence helped automate certain tasks.
50% more applications. How do you make your company culture still stand out?
What does that look like in this new virtual world?
Welcome everyone to Talent Experience Live, TXL as I like to call it. Before we get started, shout out to Justin Devitt for creating an awesome intro video for us. That got me ready to run through a wall. I've tried to do that before. Typically you just hit the wall and bounce off. But enough about that. Talent Experience Live, everything that you need to know about HR, talent acquisition, talent management, and of course, our favorite, HR tech. We are coming to you live on all of your favorite social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, maybe, YouTube, definitely. And of course, I am always joined by my lovely co-host, Natalie McKnight. Natalie, how are you?
Good, Devin. How are you?
I am not running through a wall yet, but I have the excitement. I know we have a great episode today as we enter what feels like the 100th week of quarantine. But I know we've been doing this for quite a while, and we've picked up on a lot of great insights, a lot of great topics. And today I know we're going to dive into some of those today. So what exactly are we going over?
Yeah, so today's topic is all about the HR insights we've learned during the last 6 months of quarantine. So we're taking a look back, which is really cool.
It certainly is. 6 months, I think, is always a good benchmark to look back on maybe what you've achieved over the past year and what to plan forward for. And these past 6 months have been unlike any that we've ever experienced. So we are excited to dive into some of those topics. And what Phenom has done, along with a lot of organizations, is we've taken a look at what we've learned, right? And some of those key findings and some of the things that we've learned, we've included in 3 brand new HR resiliency playbooks that are live right now on phenom.com/playbooks. You can see it on the screen. Of course, as always, this is live, so please sound off in the comments if you like anything that we are talking about. If you want to put in your own personal insights, Phenom certainly has learned a lot, but I'm sure that there is always more that we can learn. So excited to talk about how these playbooks tied into what we've learned over the past few weeks. And I know we have a special guest today, Natalie. So who are we talking with?
We do. So somebody who's typically behind the scenes, we're going to bring on a camera, and that's Tate. He's our senior product marketing manager here at Phenom. He's been closely involved with these playbooks and is going to help us go over our top 10 HR insights from the Talent Experience live stream and the podcast as well. So welcome, Tom.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here on camera. Typically, like you said, I'm behind the scenes, but we have Justin Devitt back there. So shout out to Justin on that video, though, because that was awesome. I kind of want to just play that every 3 or 4 minutes and just have that keep running, because what a pump up video. That was really cool.
I'm not going to lie. I sent it over to a couple of my friends and I was like, I feel pretty legit now, guys.
Oh,
totally. An intro video.
Yeah. And we'll talk about our podcast in just a bit, but talk about feeling not legit. Go back and listen to podcast episode number 1, because it was just Devin and I fumbling through what has evolved pretty quickly into this full multi-stream multimedia experience that both of you co-host so well. So yeah, it's been a cool evolution to see.
Awesome. Tom, we teased the playbooks that I know you have been working on diligently day and night, and we've all learned I think a lot about ourselves, about our loved ones and the people that we live with, since we haven't been able to leave the house. But most importantly, we've learned a lot about the HR landscape and how it's changed. So what do these playbooks entail?
Yeah, definitely. You know what? I'm actually going to share my screen. I think that might be super easy for me to kind of walk through what these are and the genesis behind these HR resiliency playbooks. Since April, I think the first kind of couple weeks of quarantine of COVID living, I guess you can say, it was very reactive. People were on lockdown mode, working remotely for the first time. Everyone was just trying to figure out what the future looked like. And then I believe like once April came around, we started to realize that this is going to be a bit of a long haul. And this is going to have kind of a quick or a serious impact. It's not just going to be a quick, we're going to lock down for about a week or two and then go back to normal. That's when you started to hear things like the new normal, and all these terms that have been thrown around so much. But our leadership here at Phenom, our senior leadership, they had so many great conversations with CHROs, from super respected companies, really awesome companies. And they passed along a lot of the insights from those conversations. And one thing that we kept hearing was there just is not a playbook for the situations that we're finding ourselves in. So from CHRO level all the way down to, I'm an everyday recruiter, just trying to stay focused on my tasks at hand. We discovered that there was just a total lack of playbook. So that was kind of the genesis for this idea. So our team got together and said, why don't we take all of our collective knowledge here at Phenom? Why don't we do a ton of research, collect a lot of data, take all of these conversations that we've been having from CHRO conversations with senior leadership to the conversations that we were having on the podcast and the conversations that we were having on the live stream. Let's take all of that and let's pour those into what we're calling HR resiliency playbooks, right? So we've developed 3 of these. We have accelerating virtual recruiting, establishing employee agility, and preparing for talent recovery. You can check these out at phenom.com/playbooks. I would invite you to check them out. They are free to download, so these aren't costing you anything. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, you can actually see a quick preview of all 3. And you'll get a sense of kind of the format and structure of how we are approaching these playbooks. These are not 1, 2, 3 page pieces of content. The actual playbooks are 18 to 23 pages. We've packed them with so much content, and they are checklist driven, right? And what I mean by that is we walk you through step by step how to execute the strategies and tactics that you need to get from point A to point B based on the specific challenges that you're going through. So if you look at the 3 playbooks, we have accelerating virtual recruiting. So if your organization is at a place where you're starting to reopen, you are having these sometimes brand new roles being created as a result of the pandemic. We have roles we've never even had before that require new skills. And on top of that, you have to do all of that digitally, remotely, in a virtual world. This is the playbook for you. If you are finding yourself within a hiring freeze where you're simply not hiring at all and you're really shifting your focus towards your internal teams, how you can engage employees, how you can reskill or upskill employees. Maybe you need to transform an entire business unit that used to be on site and now it's remote. Check out Establishing Employee Agility. That is the playbook for you. We cover basically how to create your own internal gig or internal talent marketplace strategy end to end. So even if those terms, those phrases are brand new to you, this guide will walk you through step by step how you can implement the perfect strategy to reskill at scale. And then finally, I'll stop rambling. Preparing for talent recovery is the last one. And this is probably best suited for organizations who really had to go through the often painful process of laying off employees or furloughing employees, and you're just not at that point of recovery. Maybe your industry is not at that point of recovery yet. There's so much that you can be doing right now to prepare for that recovery period, from creating a branded alumni network that you can use to connect with your alumni and stay connected with your alumni, to starting to source talent and send really engaging campaigns. So check these out, phenom.com/playbooks. I promise we're not going to spend the entire session today talking about these, but it was a real labor of love from our team to take all of this information and all of these insights that we've been gathering and pour these into these playbooks. So shout out to Jen, to Monica, who really put these together on our content team. Devin, you said I was working day and night on these. Not true. I was assisting, but really our content team and our creative team did such an amazing job putting these together. So props to them for sure.
We have the best content team ever.
Yes.
And, all of the topics that are covered in the playbooks, again, that's culminated a lot from what we've learned and what we've been discussing in these live shows as well as the podcast over the past 5 months. So we thought it would be great and really appropriate, since we're rolling these playbooks out, to then get together, recap our top 10 insights that we've gleaned from these conversations. So Tom, I think you're gonna bring in insight number 1 for us.
Yeah, definitely. I'll kick things off. So we have our top 10 insights. Insight number 1, have a bias for action. This was the one thing that I think we realized very quickly as soon as we were all at home. There was definitely a feeling for me personally of helplessness, or lack of control. Like I'm stuck at home. We don't know what's going on. There's not much I can do. We don't know what the future holds. There's a lot of uncertainty. Again, another pandemic buzzword, uncertainty. But it's true. That was the feeling that I was experiencing. And then right away, we realized that we just have to keep acting, right? We can't sit. We can't wait. We have to keep acting. And having this bias for action led Devin and I to spin up our podcast, right? The Talent Experience Show, which you can find on Apple Podcasts and Google Play and all those places. So we just decided one day, rather than wait for things to calm down, rather than wait for us to get back in the office, right before we shut down, we actually built out our studio in the office. So we had a studio, we had professional equipment. Justin Devitt, who's behind the scenes today, did such an amazing job getting us prepped for what would have been like a high production live stream and podcast. And we thought, okay, well, we could just wait to get back to the office. Well, we're really glad that we didn't, because 5-6 months have gone by and we're still not back in the office, but we've started the podcast. We hit it off. And the first episode is really timely. So if you go back and listen to that first episode from March, it was 4 ways that you can help job seekers right now. So even if you go back to that first episode, we were really pushing that principle of you need to take action right now. So if you're a recruiter, if you're in HR, if you're in talent acquisition, you couldn't wait. You had to support your candidates, your job seekers, people who are already in the pipeline, people who are already waiting for the next phase. You had to support them right then and there. And quality-wise, maybe it wasn't our best episode by any means, but content-wise, it still resonates with me. And that same principle of taking action, even when there's uncertainty, even when you're not quite sure what the future holds, but just continuing to move forward and take action, that also lends itself to the conception and creation of the playbooks, right? Because that's what the playbooks are all about. It's all about help steering the actions that you need to take to move from point A to point B. So insight number 1, have a bias for action. I will turn it over to Devin.
Tom, you mentioned embracing digital aspects, right? And I think when we first entered this month, right, or not this month, that first month of quarantine, if only
never-ending month.
Yeah, exactly. When we first entered that, some people were a little hesitant about embracing digital aspects. And now as we enter the fall, which is I know where a lot of people get their bread and butter candidates, right? From recruiting events, from university recruiting events, from all sorts of events, with those in-person things beginning to fall to the wayside, we really had to figure out how to attack events in the future, which brings us to insight number 2, which is embracing digital communication and connecting virtually. And this is, Tom, to go right along with you, this is our first episode on the live stream where we had a colleague of ours, Jesus, hop on and talk about the importance of live chat and chatbot for virtual events. Because you no longer get that one-on-one interaction with individuals where you can answer their questions, where you can tell them about the great benefits of your organization and exactly what appeals to them. You still need that human connection. So that's where live chat comes into play, and where chatbot comes into play, where I know I, for one, have communicated more and more with my loved ones and friends via text message in quarantine. Maybe it's because my boss isn't sitting next to me and I can text a little bit more. I won't say that on the record. We might have to cut that in a later version. But also, it's just that human interaction. And that human interaction is still going to be needed when it comes to virtual events. If you are hosting something on a live stream format or some sort of webinar format where they can get answers or questions answered in a timely way that's relevant to them. So it's not just here are our locations or here are our benefits. It's more, what does work-life balance look like? How do teams interact? And those more intimate questions that really make your company unique and really make it attractive to candidates. And this all ties into the virtual recruiting playbook, right? No one was anticipating us not being in our fancy new studio and having a wonderful podcast and a wonderful live stream. But you have to adapt. And the same thing can be said for virtual recruiting, where, you may not get to meet someone face to face and show them around the office or meet them at an event and give them some fancy koozie or some sort of swag. But you do still have to create that human interaction, and embracing virtual recruiting with live chat and with chatbot is certainly one way to do that.
And Jen Nyman on our team talks about this so well, right? And She has so many great tactics. So Jen has been on our community conversations way back. That was kind of like the precursor to the live stream. We used to do those on Zoom. And then she also had an episode that she jumped on here. And same thing. It's all about, connecting with candidates and each other virtually. And check out Jen's episode. I think we'll try to find the link and pop that in the notes here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned work-life balance really briefly there, Devin, which segues really nicely into insight number 3, which is take time off. Take time off, guys. Take it off. The PTO, take it. This is something that I feel like I personally have become passionate about, and I talked about extensively in our episode with John Dale a couple of episodes back about, it was John Dale and our Chief People Officer, Brad Goldor, and talking about these stats that just people aren't taking as much time off in this environment. And it's detrimental to our mental health and our overall wellness. And it's that cutting that line between when does our workday begin and when does it end? And when do we pick up with our personal life? And when do we, transition back into work life? And I just think it's something that's, it still needs to be talked about, right? Like, it's something that I feel like got a little bit of awareness, and it's something as leaders that we all really need to be cognizant of, that, our team's wellness, our team's ability to produce and perform really is dependent on their ability to take time off, and really just being aware of that. And I think, an insight that's really good to share is that workers at roughly 3,000 companies tracked by human resources software company Zenefits submitted approximately 63,000 requests to take vacation in April and May. But by comparison, 120,000 requests were submitted during the same time last year. That's 50% cut, right? So, keep track of, check in with your teams. Really, they're embracing the digital life. That's great, but make sure that they're taking care of themselves and making sure that they know that you approve of that as well moving forward.
I love that, and I'm guilty, because I think when you had that episode, I was doing a staycation, and I logged in when I saw the LinkedIn notification, and I joined in the comments there. So I probably should have stayed away. I 100% agree. Wellness is interesting because wellness is so complex, because it's not one size fits all for people. Like I know, Devin, you've been scheduling your runs, which is like super smart, right? Because otherwise it's not going to get done if it's not on your calendar, right? But that's you. It's going to be different for everybody, but taking time off is the easiest solution, right? It's just walk away, take time off. You've earned it. You have it, use it. I love that one. Yeah, I'm going to take a break and just say, if you're in the comments, chime in, because I'd love to know what your insights are over this very interesting period that we've been living through. So if you have any HR insights that you've been discovered, you're joining us on Talent Experience Live. We're going through our top 10. I'm going to hit you with insight number 4, which is another one of those, I'll call them pandemic buzzwords, which is embrace transformation, right? So a lot of people have been talking about digital transformation, workforce transformation. And I think I want to use that term really broadly, right? So whether it's your transformation as a department, transformation as an entire organization, digital transformation, even personal transformation, like I think that's you're not going to make it through the other end of this pandemic in a really healthy, positive way if you're just always trying to get back to the old normal, right? And I think that it's really important that we just need to keep moving through the tunnel to get to the light at the end of the tunnel, rather than like staying still or looking back and being like, how can we get back to the way things were? I think we need to keep pushing through. And the world is changing super rapidly. Again, like a lot of people I keep seeing are relying on their old playbooks, right? And that's why we created the new playbooks, right? Because the old playbooks simply were not working because these are totally different scenarios that we find ourselves in. We explored this a ton on the podcast, so I'm just going to shout out a couple podcast episodes that I think would be really, really awesome to go back and listen to if you're interested in this topic of transformation. Graham and Marty are friends from Change State, changestate.io. They are employer branding experts. So we covered employer branding, and we covered it from that mindset of how do you make sure that your employer brand is not just intact, but improves over time, especially through some challenging times. Everyone's going to make mistakes. We saw a lot of organizations make mistakes with how they handled the pandemic early on. And maybe even as we continue through, like organizations will continue to make mistakes. They talked a lot about how you can recover from mistakes, which is really important. And then we also talked about how you can just continue to fortify your legacy as a brand over time. We talked with Danielle White from Collaborative Solutions, all about workforce transformation on the podcast. That episode was so powerful for us, that conversation. We actually ended up having a follow-up webinar where we went even deeper on that topic. But that was mostly around how you can really reshape and transform your organization as a whole. So not just your brand, but like how your organization operates as we prepare for recovery. We talked with Jason and Jesse from Grant Thornton, who is very respected. They have an awesome brand, awesome legacy there. Very respected consultancy. We were all over the map on that one, but we really talked a lot about how you can assess your needs as an organization, so you can really start to design what the future state looks like. So it was like that initial, like, here's where we are today, here's where we want to be in the future, so that you can start to design your transformation rather than just let it happen organically. That was a great podcast episode. And then my last one, Devin, this was probably my favorite one, right? We talked with Luke Carrington, fellow Phenom. And we talked a lot about staffing and how you can leverage staffing and RPO to really tap into the power of that, so that you can evolve faster, and have some leverage as you're transforming. But we also talked a ton about Cheddar Bay biscuits because he told us this really great, he told us the best story about how he was coming up in his career and how he got into HR. And he was working, he was working in close proximity to a Red Lobster, right? So he was consuming a bit too many Cheddar Bay biscuits, but that was a recurring theme. So if you want a fun episode, because let's be honest, not every HR topic is fun, right? Can we agree on that? Like, not every HR topic is like super, super fun and exciting and like loads of laughs, especially during a pandemic, right? Like they've been a bit serious in tone, right? Very, matter of fact, and we've been digging deep into tactical stuff and strategic stuff. If you want a fun episode, check out that Luke episode. Like, that was a really good one.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Shout out
yes.
Cheddar Bay Biscuits. That was classic.
That was such a good episode.
It certainly was. And Luke is a wealth of knowledge as well. I know he has his own podcast, so I will shout that out. It's the Bo and Luke Show, which he is constantly talking about. So definitely check that out if you want to step away from HR podcasts and knowledge. But insight number 5, and I'm going to throw in a bonus insight before we jump into this one, is still take a shower. We've been home for months. Just because you're not going into the office, you don't want your hair to end up looking like mine. So definitely still take showers, just to add a little bit of humor and give you a taste of what the Luke podcast was like. But insight number 5 is tap into your internal talent. I think every company has gone through some sort of struggle or layoffs or furloughs, no matter what industry you're in. So when we think about our internal marketplace or our internal talent, oftentimes pre-pandemic, we were constantly, I'm going to use my knife analogy. If you've heard it before, I apologize. But we were constantly looking for people that were very good at specific skills. So if you think about a knife block on your kitchen counter, you had a knife for cutting bread, you have a knife for cutting steak, you have a butter knife, all sorts of things, these very specific items. And now we look at the pandemic and we see how much employees had to adapt and be agile. And we're looking for a lot more Swiss Army knives, right? To do multiple jobs, to help out around the organization in multiple ways. And quite frankly, those Swiss Army knives are probably already in your organization. And a great way to tap into your internal talent is through internal talent marketplaces or gigs. And we actually spoke with Renee Rabadou. I promised to get her last name right last week on the show about her launching an internal talent marketplace at Land O'Lakes, some of the struggles and some of the early successes that she's seeing. So if that's something that you're looking into, which I think you certainly should be because of the time and place, when we think about pre-pandemic, we think of gigs and internal marketplaces kind of as a nice to have, right? Maybe that's something in the future. And now we see how the pandemic has really sent shockwaves through the entire global economy as well as every workforce. Tapping into that talent and leveraging gigs is something that you should definitely look at. And when we look at the overall economy as a whole, it accounts for 36% of US workers. So 1 in 3 people are leveraging gigs in their own personal life. So they're used to doing side jobs, side hustles, to follow passion or potentially even fund their passion. When you think about that in your own work environment, I'm sure that some individuals have taken on more workload than they're probably used to, and others may have a little bit less workload. So this gives them a great opportunity to kind of raise their hand and say, hey, I'm passionate about this. I'd love to help out and learn with this a bit more. Are there opportunities, without saying, hey, I don't have any work to do? I don't think anyone is in the situation that wants to do that right now, but gigs and internal marketplaces are a great place to showcase what opportunities you have in the organization, give employees the power to try things out before they submit an application to a role or something like that, and really just help the organization better. And we tied all of this and learned a lot from gigs and our conversation with Renee and all the other good folks at Land O'Lakes, and we parlayed that into our employee agility playbook. So if gigs or the internal talent marketplace is something that you are looking at, definitely download the playbook, check out the checklist, see how your organization would benefit and how to roll it out and be successful with it. Because I think we all need to be agile right now, no matter where we're at in the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, so the next insight that we're going to go into is the fact that candidate experience really is more important than ever. But you mentioned agility, and something that I wanted to add before I hop into some of the insights that we learned from our interview with Rob Tate, who is a current job seeker in the pandemic, is actually from our prep call. So we spoke to Rob ahead of time and in the importance of being agile. My 3-year-old daughter came bursting through this door in her underwear. So Rob was kind enough to be humorous about that, and we had to kind of work around it. So that's another fun little insight that I've kind of learned along the way is the importance of being flexible and appreciating when others are flexible as well. But, Rob really had a lot of really good insights around what his current experience has been in this environment, in this virtual environment, whether it's been interviews or kind of just the experience of heading to a career site and what is and is not important to him. And I think one of the biggest insights that he had was, if it's difficult to apply, it's so much more frustrating, right? And I think that experience can really turn you off as a very skilled job seeker who has a lot to offer in this environment. If that apply process is frustrating, the ability to get that person signed on and in your system so that you can reach out to them, it becomes that much more difficult. And just how important it is to really take that entire experience under consideration when you're trying to bring people on. And I think, some of the things that we're offering from an experience perspective, we're learning are becoming more and more important, right? So video on demand interviewing and the ability to have a chatbot on your website to leverage for either screening or, frequently asked questions. All of that goes and ties into that candidate experience to try to make it as seamless as possible. And I think what Rob's insights helped us understand is kind of how important that really is to job seekers when they're already in a very stressful situation. So that was really interesting to learn, and really appreciated his insights there.
That was another fun episode too. Like Rob brought a lot of humor and energy to that episode too, and Jonathan, who was also on that episode too. That was a good one. So number 7, right? Insight number 7. It might sound like an insight that was pre-pandemic, right? But insight number 7 is more important than ever post-pandemic, which is now is the time to tell your own unique story. So we've talked a lot about brand story and your EVP, right? Your employer value proposition, which is a very technical term. But I think that's, one of the insights that I learned is that it is so crucial and important that you tell this story now, and you continue to tell this story now and through this experience that we're going through. On the podcast, we had Dobby Gibson. Dobby Gibson, he is a talent marketer at Land O'Lakes. You might remember we had Renee from Land O'Lakes on last week. So Land O'Lakes, great friends of ours, and they're just doing amazing work. Dobby came on the podcast, and we went through 5 ways that you can think like a marketer. And one of the key takeaways from that was that you really need to make sure that your story is unique and that it stands out, right? It really has to stand out and it has to be authentic. When you use cliches like people are our most important asset, or when you use cliches like we treat our employers and our team like family, you might feel like you're saying something very heartfelt and important, and you are, and those things might be true. But they are very big cliches, right? When you're trying to shape that employer brand and story. So it's important to go deeper, go further, be more descriptive, be more authentic, be more creative. Our hashtag and our brand here at Phenom is hashtag not normal. And we try to incorporate that and infuse that into everything we do, from the hiring process all the way through our experience as employees. So definitely go deeper and go further. And as you do that, as you start to develop that story and that employer value proposition, capture that in a document and make sure that that is accessible by the rest of your team, so that you're internally evangelizing, this is the story we want out in the world. And let that story evolve over time. So it's not put it in a document so it doesn't change ever. It's keep it in one place so that you can continue to talk about it, evangelize it over time. We expanded on that with Lauren Sargent. So Devin, we had a conversation with Lauren. She is from Stories Inc., partner here at Phenom. And that conversation is awesome. That'll be on the podcast feed on Tuesday. So subscribe, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those great places, and to check that one out. But at Stories Inc., they do a lot of really cool things about taking your story, your employer brand, and your internal story and bringing that to life. Through authentic storytellers who would be your employees. So they capture those stories and then they talk about all the different ways you can spread that in various channels and use that on your career site and all these types of places. So insight number 7, there has never been a better time and more important time to tell your own unique story.
It was a great conversation that we had with Lauren. And I know one of the topics that we covered that you'll hear about on Tuesday when this podcast does launch was around diversity and inclusion, which brings me to insight number 8. Diversity and inclusion, it's not seasonal. Do everything with purpose and do it year round. And Natalie, I know you and I had a spectacular conversation with Tony Prudente. His name always makes me hungry. It makes me think of al dente pasta, but that's a whole nother story. Tony provided a tremendous amount of insight as to what he's doing at Brother to push diversity and inclusion, the initiatives that they are having, and was truly a wealth of knowledge. If you haven't checked out the episode, definitely do it. It is worth your time. But one little piece of knowledge that he had said on the on the live stream, not the podcast. I'm getting all mixed up now. Yeah. One piece of information that he had said was about company logos, and he referred to it as rainbow washing when they do the rainbow colored logo. And he said that his community, they oftentimes wanted it backed up, right? With that bark, they want some bite. They want to see what initiatives you have going forward, what you're doing in the community, how you are helping, not just changing your logo. And that really resonated with me because a lot of companies want to do something good, but I don't think that they know where to start. And Tony definitely stressed just getting started is part of the process, right? Having conversations, appointing people to oversee diversity and inclusion. I know that's something we're doing at Phenom right now, which is super exciting. We're going to start to work on some product enhancements to include more individuals and diversify teams and talent pools and everything along those lines. So definitely stay tuned for that. But Tony's conversation was spectacular. I know in the Netherlands last week, they just celebrated Pride Week as well. So that's another thing to take into consideration for organizations that are global. Just because it's happening in one country doesn't mean that it's limited to that country. Think about things in a global scale. And times like this, times of crisis, I think we all need to unite and see each other's differences. And diversity and inclusion is certainly a way to do that. But it's not seasonal. It's not monthly. It's not weekly. It's not a one-day thing. It's a long process and a long journey, and something that I think needs to be considered no matter what endeavor you are going on in your HR life, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another a quote that Tony said that we got a lot of feedback around that people echoed is that, you know, if it's difficult, that means you're doing it right. Or if you're uncomfortable, it means you're doing it right. And again, you know, just getting started, it's not going to be perfect. And I think owning that and understanding that really goes a long way in that diversity and inclusion strategy. So the next one that we wanted to talk about, so insight number 9 is the importance of developing an omnichannel strategy, right? So what do we mean when we say that? We're talking about reaching people where they are. And right now where people are is in their homes, right? They're not in the office. You know, everybody feels a lot more siloed. I think everybody can kind of identify with that, as well as feeling overwhelmed, not only with work, but with personal things, right? This is affecting us in so many different facets. And we started a podcast and a live stream really to try to continue having these conversations. And we alluded to this previously, like earlier on in this stream, that we have a fancy, great studio in the office, but it was important to us not to wait to have these conversations. You know, it's great that we have all of that equipment ready to go for when we do finally come back. And I know it's going to happen someday. But for now, you know, let's just get the content out there. Let's get the conversation started, and let's really start talking about, you know, all of these strategies. So when we talk about an omni-channel strategy, what we're really talking about is you can't just have a one-size-fits-all strategy to reaching talent, right? You have to be thinking about all of the different ways that you can communicate with people and in the different methods. So things like SMS, or, you know, reaching out via email, social engagement. So through social media, but then also online events, they're going to become so much more important in this environment. You know, there is no such thing as an on-site career fair any longer for the remainder of this year, at least. So how do we then gather people, keep them engaged, and put together a really well thought out strategy? And I think that's also where our virtual recruiting playbook comes in as well, to really help identify that strategy and bring all of those channels together into one really solid plan, which I think is what people feel like they're lacking right now. So that's what we're really trying to what we're hoping to really help with these playbooks as well.
I'm just nodding your head when you said like people are going through all different types of personal stuff, because we just sold our house, right? And I have 3 little kids that are just driving us crazy. So I have myself driving us nuts. But like I totally agree. Like this has been probably, I'll speak for myself, the most overwhelming 5 to 6 months of my life, right? And I think that it's really easy, and that I'm saying that professionally and personally, right? And I think that because of the overwhelm and buzzword uncertainty of so many different things, it is really easy to think negatively, right? And to start to think we can't handle it, or we can't do it, or the challenge is too much, right? Too great. So insight number 10, and we'll end it on this one. Be optimistic about the future, right? This is something that I think as we spoke with so many different guests and really explored a lot of these topics together, very few people were doom and gloom. Like we are all united in trying to figure this out together. And one of the threads was optimism, and when you get a sliver of it, grab it and pull it in and expand upon it. Here at Phenom, one of our core values is positive thinking, so it's been ingrained in our culture, our company culture, for a while now. And I think we've all been just working really hard to do it. So be optimistic about the future. I will definitely say I'm optimistic about the future of Talent Experience Live. I think as hosts, like I enjoy being backstage and watching you both do your thing every week, which is really exciting and fun. We have awesome guests coming up, so we're going to continue to explore these topics. I know we have Ashley Burns in a couple weeks from Newell Brands. Ashley did a webinar with us before. She spoke at I Am Phenom. That is a don't miss session, right? So I think that's in 2 weeks from today. So please subscribe to all of our channels so that you get notified for that one. I know Derek Johnson from KinderCare will be up, I think, next week talking about campaigns. So now is the time to connect with your job seekers and to connect with your alumni and your employees, and using campaigns is one of the best ways to do that. So tune in for that one as well. And if you are feeling that overwhelmed and you are struggling and you feel like there isn't a playbook for you, I'm going to tie it back to the beginning of the session, right? We've released 3 playbooks. We're calling them the HR Resiliency Playbooks because we want our community of HR professionals and practitioners to be resilient, to be optimistic, to be in control, to have certainty in times of uncertainty, right? And move through the tunnel and reach that light, right? So check out phenom.com/playbooks. Download them. They're free. There's some social currency. You'll have to give us your name and email address. That's only so we can deliver them to you, right? So we can email them to you. But check out the one that makes the most sense for you. We didn't design them so that you download all 3. So go ahead and check out the one that makes sense for you. I'm going to hop off my playbook soapbox now and turn it back over to you, Devin. Devin, I was actually hoping you could just recap the 10. Yeah, we got the list up.
Tom.
Cool.
I certainly can. And before I do that, I want to say nobody pays the bills like you. You are top of the line. I absolutely love it. And it's always a pleasure having you on. We talked about getting Jonathan Dale a t-shirt that says reoccurring guest. I think we need to get you one as well. So we're working on it. But the insights that everyone came to see today, number 1 was have a bias for action. Number 2, embrace digital communication and connecting virtually. Just like my t-shirt says, if the NFL can do a virtual draft, you can connect with your candidates virtually. like Natalie said, for 3, take time off. Don't be afraid to do it. We all need those mental health breaks. Number 4, embrace transformation, just like the NFL did. Number 5, tap into your internal talent. 6, candidate experience is more important than ever, and will continue to be for as long as we are all in this HR talent acquisition game. Number 7, now is the time to tell your own unique story. Number 8, diversity and inclusion is not seasonal. Do everything with purpose all year round. Number 9, develop an omni-channel experience. Maybe start a podcast, maybe start a live stream. Just don't do it at 12 noon Eastern time on Thursdays. That's our time slot.
Yeah, don't take that time.
Exactly. And then number 10, of course, is be optimistic about the future. None of us know what the future holds, but you can't keep that dark cloud over your head. You have to stay positive. You have to keep pushing forward, and be resilient, right? That's what the playbooks are all about, is HR resiliency. But I think we've all been resilient through this time. We will continue to push forward. Personally, as we've all discussed our own issues, as my dog continues to try and jump on me while I am on the live stream. But be optimistic, and stay positive. And I think that does it. This was an awesome episode. I've learned a tremendous amount over the past 6 months, about my dog, about my girlfriend, about myself, and also about HR. So this has been fun, and I'm excited about the future.
Yeah. And sound off and let us know, what else do you want to learn? What do you want to hear from us, right? We want to know. And, that's really going to shape this show moving forward, and, just as excited to see what's to come.
You can find all of us on LinkedIn. Reach out if you want to be a part of the show, and we'll get you on here. It's a good time. Awesome.
I want my shirt to just say staff.
We can make that happen.